وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And inshallah we'll continue with our journey with the Quran. Again, this is what we're trying to do here is try to reverse some habits and instill some habits and culture and tradition in our community to fix our relationship with the Quran. Vast majority of Muslims don't have a good or the right relationship with the Quran. In many cases it's really weak, and in other cases it may not be weak, but it's not appropriate, meaning that they may be reading Quran frequently, listening to Quran frequently, memorizing Quran, learning how to read the Quran, but they don't do the main thing that Quran was designed for, which is to study it, to reflect it and study it. So I hope this Quran study becomes something normal, like the person does, everyone does on his own or on her own, and then families and communities become very, very normal to when we it doesn't have to be even formal. When we meet, we can discuss reflections on verses that you just learned and exchange meanings and concepts. It's like, those who search for gold or for oil, or it should be the same thing, that we get into the Quran as like a gold mine or something, and we're trying to get out as much as possible, as much guidance as possible. Last time, the reason we stopped extensively on the story of Adam alayhi salam and Bani Israel is mainly, if you want to summarize, I think I wrote this in my book. If you want to summarize the life altogether since Adam alayhi salam, you can summarize in like 3 stages. It's Adam to Bani Israel to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then after the final messenger and messaging, the seal of the prophets. So Adam alayhi salam was entrusted with this mission. And there was ahd and pledge and covenant with Adam. And then it was Bani Israel as a nation. And then it was the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers. And this time, more than before, even though it was from the beginning this way, but was emphasized more than before that this message is for all humanities. So it is no longer, we no longer have the prophet that is sent to particular nations or particular time. And that by itself is, it's a turning point and has to do with our relationship with the Quran, because when there is a big change happened with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this is, there is universal, complete, comprehensive message that Allah for the first time promised to preserve. Allah is preserving it and is telling us this is not for a particular nation or particular part of the world or particular time of history. This is for all humanity till the day of judgment, till the end of life and end of time. So that automatically, I mean, it doesn't mean much thinking, no-brainer. That means that this message came flexible, so that it can be valid for all times and all places. Came comprehensive, but not every verse in it is valid for all times and all places. And that the only thing that this is to be kept fresh. The only way is to be kept fresh. Unlike before, where there are new messengers sent with a new message, the only way it can be kept fresh is by through ijtihad, through people studying this message and extracting guidance from it and solutions. And and that's the process that stopped. Nowadays, even when people read, if they do read, they don't go to the source. They read books about the Quran. They don't read the Quran itself. And that's something that has to be corrected, has to be fixed. And we have to overcome all those misconceptions and misleading statements or ideas that are taken for granted. Which is that the Quran is not for everybody to understand, and the Quran, not everybody can understand it, that you don't have to, that we know what we need to know. So Islam is clear. I'm praying, I'm fasting. Why do I need to do any study? And all of that is wrong. Right. Story of Bani Israel. We're not gonna. I encourage you to study it, and because remember that these are the people who were entrusted with this message before Muslims, and Quran is emphasizing on their story to warn Muslims against committing the same mistakes, and unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. I'm gonna start jumping after emphasizing these stories, and I'm gonna go to verse 80 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Verse 80 is, of course, there are a lot of verses that emphasize the concept of Tawheed, but sometimes we need also, like for example, 77. أَوَلَا يَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا يُسِرُّونَ وَمَا يُعْلِنُونَ. Don't they know, those who are trying to deceive people, don't they know that Allah knows what they conceal and what they reveal? Just try to get the translation. So it's important to keep this in mind when you try to address people, and you feel happy that you gave them the wrong impression, or you misled them, or you managed to get out. Just keep in mind that you're dealing with Allah, who knows not only what you do and what you say, but even your intentions and everything that you conceal. You cannot conceal it from Allah. Do they not know that God is well aware of what they conceal and what they reveal? So let's go for verse 80, and why emphasizing on this? وَقَالُوا لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً قُلْ اتَّخَذْتُمْ عِندَ اللَّهِ عَهْدًا فَلَنْ يُخْلِفَ اللَّهُ عَهْدَهُ أَمْ تَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Why I selected this verse? They say the fire will only touch us for a few days. Say to them, have you received the promise from God? For God never breaks his promise. Or are you saying things about him of which you have no real knowledge? Why I'm picking this? Because unfortunately, in the minds of many Muslims today. This is what is keeping them from being motivated to do good and to do as much as they can, or to restrain themselves. There is in the back of their mind this idea that at the end of the day, I'm going to be punished for a few days. That's fine. I can take that. I can live with that. And then we'll make the transition and we're done. It's very unfortunate that even though this was emphasized in more than one place in Quran, to warn Muslims against it, yet Muslims fell in the same path. This is wrong, and this is inappropriate. It's wrong because أيام المعدودات, a few days, the punishment, it's like the rewards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are unthinkable. The punishment is also unthinkable. So both of them are beyond your imagination. You should be working so that you don't be exposed to punishment even for one moment, not for a few days. This is not a joke. That's why I said it's wrong, it's foolish, and it's inappropriate. There was a hadith. There is a hadith that says that on the day of judgment they bring the person who had the most pleasant life, and the one who enjoyed himself in this life, and beyond imagination. He was very happy in this life. And they immerse him for a moment, for a second or a fraction of seconds or whatever, for a moment in the punishment. And then they ask him, have you ever seen any good moments in your life or any happiness? He will say no. Never. So one moment will make a person forget tens of years of happiness. And there are other hadith, a lot of hadith about punishment. Actually, and I don't emphasize this verses and hadith about punishment because I strongly believe that we should not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of fear, and that should be the last result. But before that, we should be worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of love, out of gratitude, because that's a much bigger motivator or engine of motivation than fear, which push you to do the minimum. So it's wrong, it's foolish to think that I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do, because at the end of the day, I can take a few days of, this is not a jail, yeah. This is not a few days of jail time to say I can take it and then I will move on. That's why the Quran tells them that did Allah promise you this? And who told you? And who told you that it's going to be only a few days? And have you received the promise from God? For God never breaks his promise. Or are you saying things about him of which you have no real knowledge? So keep this in mind, and first of all, for yourself, try to resist this idea. It's wrong, and actually you should be working to be admitted to the highest level of paradise, of heaven, without even hisab, without reckoning. That should be your eyes should be on this prize, and don't look for the minimum grade, don't look for a C grade, look for the A+. That I tell my students, especially the good ones, the brilliant ones, I tell them that when you get even a 99, you should ask yourself why you lost that point. And because otherwise you can start to become complacent. Next time you get 95, and then before you know it, you find yourself in the 80s. Again, it's wrong. Resist this temptation. If you find yourself lazy or reluctant to do what you're supposed to do, or to restrain yourself from things that are forbidden, and you have this in the back of your mind, try to eliminate and weed out this idea, because again, it's foolish idea and it's wrong. And then it's inappropriate to deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this way. Give and take, and then how much I'm going to get and how much punishment, and let's see if I can take that punishment. That's very inappropriate to deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this way. And then the next verses, and then of course for yourself, and please, when you talk to people, especially people around you, when you talk to Muslims around you, make sure that many of them, they have this in the back of their mind. And maybe this, and try to figure out a way and find out a way to tackle this up front, because a lot of times that's what's preventing people from changing and listening and shaping up spiritually and etc. It's because of this idea that if worse comes to worse, it's going to be just few days in hellfire, and I can take that. And then the next two verses emphasize an important principle in Islam, because remember, one of the main problem or main reason that led Bani Israel in the wrong way was that we are the chosen people. Now, when you feel that you are the chosen people, you may start to become complacent, and then that basically your sins are forgiven. We have some sects in Islam who got into this trap, whether it is some extreme Sufis or the people who think they are among the Firqa Najiyah, that we are. So these verses, they tackle that misconception from the roots. There is no original sin. There is nobody is responsible for somebody else's sin. There is nobody has a special treatment or special status. There are some rules and policies that can apply to everybody. This rule, Quran calls it in some places, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وُزْرَ أُخْرَى, and in this place here, in this part, says, بَلَى مَنْ كَسَبَ سَيِّئَةً وَأَحَاطَتْ بِهِ خَطِيئَتُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. There is no chosen people, there is no original sin, there is nobody who's going to take care of your sins, there is no such thing. There is personal, individual responsibility. Truly those who do evil and are surrounded by their sins. That's a beautiful, eloquent description. Someone committing sin and like putting the rope on his neck. وَأَحَاطَتْ بِهِ خَطِيئَتُهُ, surrounding himself with a sin. And remember, the sins are things that they are like shackles. يَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ. Sins are what holds people back, or what prevents people from reaching their potential. So أحاطت به خطيئته, and are surrounded by their sins, will be the inhabitants of the fire, there to remain. While those who believe and do good deeds will be the inhabitants of the garden, there to remain. This is what was mentioned to Adam alayhi salam. فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَن تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا. It keeps emphasizing this in Quran time and time again, over and over, that this idea of personal responsibility. Now, why this is important? Personal responsibility prevents any loopholes or any ways to avoid accountability. Because this idea of original sin or chosen people or somebody died for your sins, all of this can make you complacent, because it can get you a way or an exit so that you feel that you are no longer accountable for your action. Somebody somehow is going to be taken care of. So that's important. And then it closes another exit that is important, which is the judgmental attitude, that you become you busy judging people. Who is a good believer, who's going to end up in fire, who's going to end up. So this is the emphasis of individual and personal responsibility closes the two exits. The exit that will lead you to find a way so that you can avoid accountability, and therefore you can feel that you do what you want and you do what you like, and you, at the end of the day, somehow you will manage not to pay the price for it, or you're going to stay a few days in hellfire. The verses are very linked together here. Or you're going to stay a few days in hellfire and then get out of it, and close the other exit, which is very dangerous, slippery road, which is that if you don't really focus on yourself and on your status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and on your deeds and your records, and whether you are ready to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not, you may become busy with others. And that's very slippery road. At the end of the day, it may lead to takfir and may lead even to extremism and terrorism. It starts there. It starts at that point. When you become busy classifying others, putting them in categories. Who is the saved group? What are their criteria? So this is not among the saved group, but this is not. But you are not. And you have a problem with your aqidah. You have a problem with your ibadat, your worship rituals. You have a problem with this. You have a problem with that. That's none of your business. Just mind your own business, because when you start to be busy with others, implicitly you are feeling that you already made it. So you are no longer have to worry about yourself. Now you are worried only about others, because for you it's done deal. And why it is done deal? Either because you think that you are among the chosen people, or you think what you're doing is great enough that you don't need to worry, or you think that the group or the ideology or the sect that you belong to, these are the special. By the way, and I don't see big difference between those who say that they're the chosen people or those who they say we are the firqa najiyah. So it's a difference here. We are the saved group, the group that is the only group that is going to make it here. I mean, just people have to remember that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, with everything that he has done, he said he will not make it to heaven except with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not with his deeds. The Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar al-Khattab, there are narrations about them indicates to what extent they're worried. So these people did not take anything for granted, and they did not become busy with others. Who are we? Who are you? Who are we to do that? So keep this in mind, please. That's a very essential concept in Islam, that when it comes to Day of Judgment, you should try to work for the maximum, not for the minimum, and you should never fall in this trap of it's going to be just some quick punishment or a few days of hellfire, and then we'll make it. And then keep this personal responsibility, so that even when you're making da'wah, you never cross the line and you become judgmental, or you become someone who will you feel that your job is to convert people, or to justify or to classify them, put them in this category or that category, and as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs your help in judging people, even though Allah made it clear that that's his exclusive domain. Hey,
Dr. Lucy, I have a question.
Sure.
So where does the concept of, because unfortunately a lot of Muslims have this concept of, oh yeah, we're only going to be in the hellfire for a couple of days. Is there a misunderstanding of hadith somewhere? In addition, I did hear that, I don't know what the source is, but there is something out there. It's probably, I'll let you elaborate on it, but there is a source out there that says, whether, right or wrong, that we're only, eventually everybody's going to make it out of the hellfire. From what I came across, we just read this, the ayah, hum fiha khalidun. So that means to me that it's, people are going to be there forever. So can you elaborate on that?
And let me start with the second part. Again, I don't want us to dwell a lot about the day of judgment and how many days it's going to end up. Whether we're going to perpetuate or not, or whether Muslims are going to perpetuate, or Muslims will end up getting out of, any believer will end up getting out of hellfire. I don't want to get there, because our goal should be to make it to heaven, one, without any punishment. Second, hopefully to the highest level, compete for the highest level. Three, to try to be among those who will be admitted to heaven without even hisab, without reckoning. That should be in our mind. And therefore, we should resist the temptation of thinking about how many days and am I going to make it at the end? Because even discussing this, it's not different than the idea that I'm going to end up spending 2 days. Even when we say, I heard or we read that believers will not perpetuate in hellfire. Like, what's the point? And they don't want to be there even for a moment. They want to have a record that will, nowadays when you take those standard exams, there are scores that will get you an admission. There are scores that will make you very struggling. You may end up at the end of the day accepted, but after losing 1 year or 2 years, you may end up accepted to medical school. But maybe after you lose 1 year or 2 years, and maybe you get to medical school that is not really has good standing or reputation, and you may end up taking a major that you don't like or specialty. Why is this? Just focus on getting the highest score that will get you admitted quickly and to the school that you want and to the specialty that you like. Same thing here. So we should try to not to get into this discussion of how long, and because many Muslims, for them, this idea that the believer is not going to perpetuate in hellfire, it's for them license to sin. So if that's the case, then that's fine. So I don't need to worry about it. So this is even worse than few days. These people, they don't mind even few years, or I don't know how long. But if they are told that at the end of the day you're not going to perpetuate, they can become complacent. So that's the second part. What was the first part, Ayman? You said many Muslims have this idea of few days. Where are you coming from? Now it's coming from, clearly, this is a tendency that started from day one with the humanity. Always the human being, whether in religious or even at work or anywhere, we have this natural tendency to avoid accountability. We don't want to be held accountable for our actions. So we always look for a way or an exit to avoid that. People in general, they don't like to be held accountable. So again, they start finding these exits. So when somebody comes to you and tells you, for example, that Jesus died for your sins and you don't need to worry about it, that makes you very comfortable. For example, or someone tells you that as a Muslim, brings you some hadith and etc., that you should be okay. You shouldn't, or it's going to be only a few days, or Prophet Muhammad will intercede for you, so don't talk. I mean, we have this tendency, usually, because accountability means discipline and self-restraint. And usually people have the natural tendency to do as they like, not to restrain themselves. I mean, we restrain ourselves to avoid consequences. Otherwise, people want to go beyond the speed limit. People don't want to stop sign. People, they don't want to do that. People, they want to do as they like, but they are restricted because of the consequences. So, where is this idea coming from? It's like any other idea. It's like you hear all the time among Muslims, when you tell them about their duties, they will tell you Allah is Ghafur Rahim. Allah is the forgiving. That's another way to avoid accountability. So I don't need to restrain myself. I don't need to work hard. It's like students who can find a way to cheat. Why should I work hard and prepare if I can manage to do that? Students will beg professors to have take-home exams. Why? Because take-home exams, you don't have to work for it. You don't have to work hard. You don't need to be sharp and prepared. So again, it's a natural tendency that results in we are the chosen people. We are, as we'll see later on, وقالت يهود والنصارى نحن أبناء الله وأحباؤه. We are the children of God and the beloved ones. So there will be no consequences, no punishment. We are the chosen people. There are some extreme Sufi sects, they have this idea that their sheikh, and because of their sheikh and his followers will be exempt from hisab, because they have a way with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they made an arrangement or a deal or something. So this is, unfortunately, it's a natural tendency. It's like a gravity, like any natural force that is pulling us in some direction, and it requires resistance. It requires a resistance to remember that I'm created to fulfill a mission. I need to do it to the best of my ability, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so gracious with me and gave me so much. I want to express my gratitude and my love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to compete for the highest place, for the best ranking with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That these are the medicine. These are the antibiotics against those temptations and those diseases that will take you in the direction to become complacent. The verse after that is very important. All the Quran, of course, is important, but this verse emphasizes an important concept. And subhanAllah, everything in Quran is for a reason, and it is put in a place for a reason. And this is وَإِذَا أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is spelling out the covenant that He has taken on Bani Israel. And of course, that covenant is ours. Remember that everything that Allah tells us that He a pledge or a covenant with Adam, a pledge or a covenant with Bani Israel, a pledge or a covenant with other people before us. We have inherited all this legacy. What is this mithaq? What is this covenant? لا تعبدون إلا الله. توحيد. وبالوالدين إحسانا. Parents. وذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وقولوا للناس حسنا وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة ثم توليتم إلا قليلا منكم وأنتم معرضون. This is verse 83. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, remember when we took a pledge from the children of Israel, worship none but God. That's Tawheed. Be good to your parents. And that's a very important thing, that the parents comes after Tawheed. That happened in Surah Al-Isra, happened in Surah Al-Ankabut, happened in Surah Luqman, repeatedly in Quran, happened in Surah Al-Nisa, repeatedly in Quran, this parents after Tawheed. And that's for you. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَعند سورة الأحقاف. Surah Al-Ahqaf, it didn't come after the Tawheed. Tawheed is in Surah Al-Isra, in Surah Luqman. Maybe Sheikh Ismail can correct us later. Alright. Remember when we took a pledge from the children of Israel, worship none but God, be good to your parents and kinsfolk, your cousins, your relatives, to orphans and the poor. Speak good words to all people. That's very powerful. Speak good words to all people. That's something, by the way, missing big time nowadays in Muslim societies, whether it is in face-to-face interaction or online, in social media. People don't choose their words. Speak good words to all people. Keep up the prayers and pay the prescribed alms. Then all but a few of you turned away and paid no heed. What can we get this verse? Again, it was repeated in a very similar way, Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa, which is Surah 4, verse 36. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنبِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ مَنْ كَانَ مُخْتَالًا فَخُورًا. What is this idea? We're going to start with the parents. وَإِذَا أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. Of course, ميثاق بني إسرائيل, it's your ميثاق, it's your covenant. The covenant with Bani Israel. It was passed on to us. لا تعبدون إلا الله. Of course, عبادة, توحيد, there are levels of tawheed. And I'm not talking about judging people, I'm talking about everybody evaluates himself. There are levels of tawheed. You want to reach the highest level of tawheed. Tawheed, the highest level of tawheed is measured by the increased presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life, in your thinking, in your action, in your decisions, in your choices. The highest level of tawheed is when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than anything else. When you will not think twice or hesitate or reluctant to do what Allah expects you to do, even if it is hard or not convenient or against the social norm or whatever, you'll do it. The highest level of tawheed is what makes you someone who feels so indebted to Allah. So that Allah has given you so much that you are always looking for ways to express that in words and in deeds. So لا تعبدون إلا الله, when you go through verses of Tawheed in Quran, don't go skim through quickly thinking that I'm already there, that's already given, that's in my pocket. That's not true. Tawheed is a lifelong strive and struggle to purify it, to make it to reach the highest level, the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to perfect your worship, to turn your life into an act of worship, to make everything that you do dedicated to Allah. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. So to be someone who is constantly thinking and looking for ways to do things that will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will fulfill and live up to the expectations. طيب بالوالدين إحسانا. Why walidain, parents, come after Tawheed in many places in Quran? Because the reason you are who you are now is, one, because of Allah, and then because of your parents. Allah created you, your parents made you the one who you are. Allah put life in your body and make you someone, created you, and Allah put the love of you in the hearts of your parents so that they made you. I mean, they made you because you came to this world helpless, unable to do anything. Helpless completely, unable to walk, unable to eat, unable to take care of yourself. And that's not for a day or two or for a week or for a month. Your parents took full care of you, 100%. For at least a couple of years or a few years when you were able to do nothing by yourself. Nothing. And that's big. That comes next only to creation. Because just imagine your parents were not there. I mean, you would have finished in the second day or first day, whatever. You couldn't even survive yet. So you are indebted for your life to Allah who gave you life, and to your parents who preserved, and then to your parents who preserved that. And of course to Allah who made it possible or put that love in the hearts of your parents to take care of you. And then you go to, even when you start to grow up and you start walking and etc., you're not, income, nothing. There are people who are sponsoring you, offering you, providing you everything, and then sponsoring your education. Elementary school, high school, then don't tell me this is it's a free education. There is nothing free. And then until you get where you are. So those who do not do their maximum, their best, to take good care of their parents and to make them, to comfort them, and to try, because you will never, there is nothing you can do to return all the favors of your parents. Because some people, they think they can replace that with money. There is no money that you can pay that will compensate your parents for what they did for you. Nothing. I mean, I don't know how much you're gonna count hour, or so. One thing that you need to know, that all of you need to keep all of this in mind. There is nothing you can do to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough for that all that He has given you. There is nothing that you can do to thank your parents enough. Nothing. Literally. It's just you do your best and hope that Allah accepts, and also you do your best with your parents and hope they accept, and hope they will. And your target is not, it's for them to be pleased with you. It's like with Allah, it's like you want Allah to be pleased with you, also with your parents. It's not like I did what I can and that's it. No, it's, you should do your best and make sure that they are pleased with you. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And then keep in mind that you are not doing them a favor, that you are paying back a debt. You're paying back a debt. And even while you're doing that, sometimes reluctantly, they are still praying for your success and for your happiness. That's why you never see in Quran Allah reminding us to be good to our children. That's a given. So, بالوالدين إحسانا, don't take this lightly. because you have no room for mistakes. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them in the same verse, not only here, even in Surah Al-Isra, and وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put something together with Tawheed, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ فَإِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِندَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. Beautiful verses in Surah Al-Isra. For those who are interested, it's in Surah Al-Isra, in the beginning of Surah Al-Isra. It's verse 23-24. Immediately after Tawheed, لا تجعل مع الله إلها آخر فتقعد مذموما مخذولا وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا, and then elaborates on the parents part. So you should do everything you can, and you do it happily, not reluctantly. Yes, sometimes it may not be convenient. Yes, sometimes old people are not easy to deal with, but that's not an option. It's not choice, because you are not doing a favor. You're not initiating something. You are returning a favor, and favor that there is nothing that you can do to return it. And so keep that in mind. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam one time was sending the member, and he was saying Ameen, Ameen, and Ameen 3 times. And then later the companions asked him, why you were saying Ameen? We were about what, Yani? And in one of them, he was said that Jibreel was saying things, and he was saying Ameen. And in one of them is basically cursing, almost cursing, or basically calling it silly or naive or stupid or whatever. A person who reached the time where one or both of his parents are old, and he cannot take advantage of that to make it to heaven. The other one was about the one who makes it to Ramadan and does not get his sins forgiven. It's ridiculous. And then one of them is someone who, with all the opportunities Ramadan comes with, somebody misses them. And then this idea of the person who misses the opportunity that his one or both of his parents, you should look at it as an opportunity. When you become grown up, and then you get the job, and you have money in your hands, and you start be able to give, and then you find your parents are still alive, one or both of them, you should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you still have that opportunity, because that's a highway to heaven. You can fly, with very little things that you do. It's a good word here, it's a gift here, it's help there, it's not much. And unfortunately, in many cases, parents don't even need financial help, and yet children miss the opportunity. But even if they need financial help, they should have priorities, because again, it's like you need to pay your debt before even your needs. You have to take care of your parents before anything else. Take that seriously, because this is do or die. Parents pleased with you. You will see it in this life, by the way. And I saw a number of cases of people who had their life easy, and things are really, people, they think of them as lucky. And then if you ask, you find that they were very good to their parents. And I saw other cases also, opposite cases. People who were suffering in this life, and everything is hard. Everything they try to do is, every door they knock on, they find it closed. And then if you ask, you find out that they were not good to their parents. Yeah. وبالوالدين إحسانا وذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وقولوا للناس حسنا. طيب. And the reason I'm emphasizing this, because in both cases, in this case here, it was mentioned before Salah and Zakat. Anytime in Quran something is mentioned before Salah and Zakat, you have to pay full attention to it. Because that's for a reason. Because there is hardly anything more important. These are the pillars of Tawheed. Boxed in between Tawheed and prayers are parents, cousins. Like, what about cousins? Cousins also in Surah Al-Isra, again. In Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ وَالْمِسْكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ. Like here, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. And give your cousins or your relatives their dues. It's not a favor. No, their dues. They have right in your money. No, so of course, we're not talking about abuse. We're not talking about people become lazy and rely on you. We're talking about normal cases. We're talking about normal cases. You have a cousin who's either because of health issues cannot work or need help, or they try to work but there is no opportunity, or so we're talking about reasonable and normal cases. Yes, Quran says, I'm not the one who said this. Quran says, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. Their cousins, they have rights in your money, in your money. And here, after parents comes their qurba. And then those who need help, they also have rights in your money. That's a very unique concept, by the way, in Islam. Yeah. And how come it's my money? Yeah? No, it's like government has rights in your money that you have to pay taxes. Your cousins have rights in your money. The orphans and the poor, those who need help, if you can afford it, if you can help, you have it. So it came boxed between Tawheed and Salah. I mean, there is nothing that can be inserted there except it is so important. Yani, like the Shura consultation was in Surah Al-Shura, was inserted between Salah and Zakat. Between Salah and Zakat. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. وأمرهم والذين استجابوا لربهم وأقاموا الصلاة وأمرهم شورى بينهم ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. So the consultation was inserted between prayer and zakat. These things are done for a reason in the Quran. It's like كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. That enjoining good and forbidding evil came before belief in Allah. Does it mean that is more important? No. It's just to highlight it. والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة. Putting أمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر before Salah and Zakat. So,
Dr. Anushi, what was the ayah you read that had Shura in between prayer? Salah was that?
It's Surah Shura. Surah Shura itself. I will tell you the surah number. It's Surah Shura. Shura is 42. And the verse is 30, no. It's 39. 38. والذين استجابوا لربهم وأقاموا الصلاة وأمرهم شورى بينهم ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. So these things in Quran, they are done for a reason. So keep this in mind, please, because in Surah An-Nisa, after mentioning these things, Quran was talking about bukhl. الذين يبخلون إن Allah, basically those who don't do that, those who are not good to their parents, those who are not good to their cousins, those who do not help those who need help, etc. And in Surah An-Nisa were the neighbors also. والجار ذو القربى والجار الجنب والصاحب بالجنب وابن السبيل. The list was even more extensive. And then says, إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا. Like those who do not do this, do not heed these commandments, they are the ones that Allah does not like them and call them arrogant. الذين يبخلون ويأمرون الناس بالبخل.
Dr. Anushi, I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
so, yeah, Jazakallah khair for pointing out the encapsulation, the concept. What does it say about someone's salah or zakah if what's encapsulated is not being addressed, like in verse 83 of Surah Al-Baqarah?
They put themselves in deep trouble. They missed the point with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They missed the point that this deen is not about cherry picking. It's not pick and choose. This is very serious business, and you have to take it as such. If it is because Quran also in more than one place really condemns those who pick and choose. أفتؤمنون ببعض الكتاب وتكفرون ببعض وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم. So people should not do that, and they should not pick and choose. And anything that is highlighted like this, it is highlighted for a reason. So you cannot say, I'm going to believe in Allah and perform my prayers, but this Amr Ma'ruf and Nahy Anil Munkar, I don't seem to like it. Or I can gonna pray and fast and pay zakat, but this shura thing and consultation and being good to my parents and to my cousins, it's something that I'm not comfortable with. This is not appropriate in dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is basically Allah praises believers who hear and obey. إنما كان قول المؤمنين إذا دعوا إلى الله ورسوله ليحكم بينهم أن يقولوا سمعنا وأطعنا. The true believer, the only thing that you need to know is you need to know. If you know about something that is expected from you, you immediately at least try your best. At least do your best. But picking and choosing or something that, for example, someone can be a dictator and say this, and then I'm going to pray at night. Yeah. No, it's not appropriate. You can't.
Would you say, not to be judgmental or anything like that, but would you say that they need to reevaluate their aqidah or their understanding, and maybe their salah is not, they're not getting they're not performing it right? Maybe
I don't want to get to acceptance and judgmental, but I would say that people have to reassess and reevaluate, and every one of us has to do this all the time, and then close the gaps. And that's a very serious gap. If you miss something that was emphasized in Quran in more than one place, and it was put, for example, this walidain, parents, was put next to Tawheed, something that was inserted between Salah and Zakat, something that was put before Iman, these are not things to be taken lightly. All right. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. And I said this number of times. I said there are verses in Quran, one verse, or a part of the verse, can change the life of an individual or the situation of a society. This is one of them. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Just imagine this Muslim world nowadays, that is really, there is so much tension, so much cursing, so much hatred, so much people who sectarian beliefs or attitudes, and just imagine. And social media has only made that even bigger. Just imagine people choose their words. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. You can disagree as much as you want. You can express your opinion and defend it as hard as you want, without insulting someone or disrespecting someone. I don't know what's hard about it. What's hard about someone controlling their tongue and picking their words, select your words. You see, at least when you are not angry, when you are not very angry and out of your mind or out of control completely, select your words. Select your words. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. Not to Muslims. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. And say, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. What is it? Speak good words to all people. Speak good words to all people. Please remember this and let's practice first, and then remind others again. Whenever you see someone who's really getting out of control sometimes for very minor issues, just tell them قولوا للناس حسنا وقولوا للناس حسنا ولا تجادلوا أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي هي أحسن. ولا تجادلوا أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي هي أحسن. They say, when you go to the supermarket and you want to buy some fruits or some vegetables, you pick, or when you are in a garden or farm and then you want to pick some fruits that are ripe, they say that's what the companions used to do. They used to select their words like you select the atay the tamar. You select the best fruits. You are in the supermarket and you're buying fruits or vegetables and you choose the best pieces. They say that the companions used to select their words like you selecting the best fruits or atay the tamar. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ ثُمَّ تَوَلَّيْتُمْ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. So this verse connected with the verse in Surah An-Nisa, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Very similar, by the way. The list over there is more extensive. وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنبِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا. ملكت أيمانكم, you can replace it today with your employees maybe, or your people who work for you. It was verse 36, Surah An-Nisa, verse 36. It says, worship God, join nothing with Him. Be good to your parents, to relatives, to orphans, to the needy, to neighbors, near and far, to travelers in need, and to your slaves. Of course, slaves, this is something that was there at that time. There is no slavery. It runs against the essence of Islam, of equality, and people are born free, and people have equal rights. But that's the system that Islam found and took care of it gradually and resolved it like it found alcohol drinking is an integral part of the lives of Arabs, and then took care of it also gradually. God does not like arrogant, boastful people who are miserly and order other people to be the same. ويكتمون ما آتاهم الله من فضله. They hiding the bounty God has given them. So if you don't help those who are in need and you hide what Allah has given you, you are negating and voiding the main concept in Islam that everything belongs to Allah, and you are only a manager entrusted to manage the time that you have and the money that you earn, and then manage it according to the owner, and the owner is telling you, help, be good to your parents and to your relatives and to your neighbors, etc. So you can see that in Surah An-Nisa, the list was extensive. By the way, we don't hear this a lot of emphasis. I hear it, for example, in this society that be good to your neighbor or be good neighbor, etc. But in our community, we don't hear a lot of emphasis on this, be good to your neighbor. Neighbors near and far. That's in Surah An-Nisa. Another covenant you should not kill. وَإِذَا أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَكُمْ لَا تَسْفِكُونَ دِمَاءَكُمْ وَإِذَا أَخَذْنَا مِيثَاقَكُمْ لَا تَسْفِكُونَ دِمَاءَكُمْ. The next verse, 84, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, part of the pledge, remember that this verse is spelling out the pledge. We took a pledge from you, do not shed one another's blood or drive one another from your homelands. We see it happening, unfortunately, nowadays. Not only Bani Israel did that, Muslims are doing it to Muslims, shedding blood and driving them from their homelands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding Bani Israel and reminding us actually through Bani Israel about that there are covenants between you and Allah, and you should observe them, and you should not be like you should not do like Bani Israel did, because Quran says after they agreed, ثم أقررتم أنتم تشهدون ثم أنتم هؤلاء تقتلون أنفسكم وتخرجون فريقا. So you pledge, and then you don't honor your pledges. كلما عاهدوا عهدا نبذه فريق منهم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is reminding us through the story of Bani Israel that there are covenants that we have between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'd better know them and honor them. Okay, الذين آمنوا أوفوا بالعقود. And the highest contract is the contract between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And actually every other contract is a contract that comes out, it's a derivative of that covenant between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The verse that we mentioned also emphasizes the social aspects of Islam. You know that these days, unfortunately, the political component became very dominant in the Islamic thought, and at the expense of the spiritual, at the expense of the social component, at the expense of the intellectual, at the expense of so many other things. Even character became weak, is not really emphasized enough, because unfortunately this phenomena of political Islam took things out of proportion. There is a room for political activism in Islam and advocacy and etc. and standing for justice and be civically engaged and participate in the selection of those who are in charge, etc. But that should not become the whole thing. And it should not take over many other components. So in this verse, the spiritual, which is لا تعبدون إلا الله, and then everything else was social. It's reaching out to people and helping those who are in need, and maintaining those relationships with your parents and with cousins, etc. Unfortunately, you don't hear this emphasized enough, and that's why nowadays, especially here, Muslim community is not really socially vibrant. If it was not for some ethnic groups, maintaining some social networks and some social life, the community at large that comes to the mosque, there is hardly any social life. There is very formal, like once a year or twice a year, community picnic or community dinner or whatever, but that's not real. There is to the point that you know it, that nowadays you may be praying in a mosque for several years, seeing people on regular basis, and you don't know even their names. You don't know their names. You don't know their. You have no idea. You don't know each other. So anyway, just want to emphasize this because one of the aspects of Islam that needs to be revived big time, in addition to the spiritual and the sense of mission, of course, comes first. The real tawheed, the spiritual, also the social component that went neglected and became very weak because the sha'air was blown out of proportion, the fiqh was blown out of proportion, and then unfortunately in cases the political dimension was blown out of proportion. I'm going to stop here so that we can have few minutes for questions and comments. The floor is yours. Here to discuss Turkey converting to a mosque. Some of our participants find themselves in the conversation. Hey, it's up to you, and I don't have any issue. Brother is asking about should we discuss the decision to convert the museum to a mosque in Turkey. I mean, if someone has comment or question about it, I don't mind.
I have basically a position on that. I wanted to share it with the group. There's, because we might come across the topic, with friends, I go back to Omar radiallahu anhu, when he opened Jerusalem. He was asked to pray inside a church, and he refused. And he said that would give Muslims after me the excuse to turn the church into a mosque. So he prayed next to the church, and the Muslims after that built Masjid Omar in Jerusalem, fil Quds. So alhamdulillah, I prayed in that mosque several times. My take on it, I think is the Turkish government is turning it into a political decision. I don't think it should be turned into a mosque, because it was a church before, and in a time where everybody's so polarized, politics so polarized, I don't think it was a good decision to turn it into a mosque, given the opinion and the decision by Umar radiallahu anhu, a few centuries ago.
Well, this is not probably the analogy is not exact, because this was a mosque also for a long time, and I mean it's a very old problem, because since the conquest of Istanbul, this was turned into mosque and remained for a long time as a mosque, and then was reverted to be like a museum, thinking that there are enough mosques so it's not really needed. And the only thing I want to say about this is that, unfortunately, a lot of Muslims, and probably more in the Arab world, there is this tendency to exaggerate things, exaggerate in either direction. Yeah. I heard that people were saying this is the first step to liberate Al-Aqsa, and this is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know until when we're going to continue with this very emotional, they call it primitive, by the way. They call it tafkir tufuli, the good and bad, or when you see the contrast, because that's how a child thinks. The child thinks that this is good, this is bad. This is something I like, that I hate. This is a person I good, that's a bad person. This is very primitive, way of thinking. So until when we're going to continue like this? If we like someone, if we like a political leader or etc., we start exaggerating any word he says, any decision he makes, and vice versa. If we don't like someone, we don't see anything good comes of that person. That's against the teachings of Islam. Totally. Which encourage us to be fair, even with ourselves, even كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين أو الأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما, and then ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم. So Quran teaches us to be objective, to be fair-minded, to be people who do not exaggerate, do not blow things out of proportion. So I'm saying this because this is happening every day. It has nothing to do with the decision. This is happening every day, that you see in every society, any minor issues, and you have quickly people go to both extremes. Any person who become in the controversial discussion, people go to extremes. Someone feels that I have to defend that person regardless of what he does, and somebody else finds himself compelled, I need to criticize that person even if he does the best thing in the world. That's very bad. Take it easy. You can be very comfortable. You don't have to defend anybody. You don't have to defend even yourself. When you do something wrong, you say, I was wrong, I apologize, it was my mistake, it was my fault. So this way you can really have the peace of mind and tranquility. Never mind to put yourself under tension and pressure that because I'm a fan of Erdogan, or I'm a fan of this group or that group or this sect or this political party, then it's my job to find an excuse for everything they do and blow out of proportion anything they say. We don't have to. Just take it easy. Now, given that context or that thing, this is definitely political decision. Has nothing to do with religion, because we're not talking about Turkish people did not have a place to pray, or you were not talking about you won a war, or you conquered the place, or we don't talk about anything. We're talking about something in your own territory. You decided to turn it back, to reverse it, to be a mosque. There is nothing wrong, by the way. When you say political decision, doesn't mean it's bad. It's a political decision. There are political calculations. Turkey is a country that has a lot of issues nowadays, internal and external, and may have an election soon. It might be even early election, and these are political considerations. So, what big change this is going to make for Muslims in Turkey or anywhere in the world? It's not a big deal. It's not. It's an illusion of victory. It's going to make us for a few days, in a state of, I don't know how do we describe it, like nashwa, or people who feel really very so excited. Maybe this can help us making up for all shortcoming and deficiency happening anywhere. So we can't forget about all the mess in Syria, all the mess in Libya, all the mess in Iraq, because there is this decision of I'm not sure even that's going to be a real mosque or not, because from the statements they held, it's open to worship and everybody can come and worship. I'm not sure about where this is going, but let's say it is going to be a pure mosque where you have 5 times prayers and you have Jumu'ah, etc. Good, alhamdulillah. It's right or wrong, should it be kept as a museum, etc. The question I'm saying is really, what is the big impact of this on Turkey, on Turkish people, on Muslims in the world? I can see it's much less than the way it was portrayed by some people. Portrayed that as if this is a turning point in the history of Muslim, and people were making it close to liberating Aqsa Mosque. No, there is nothing close to that. There's no comparison whatsoever. Just put things in perspective and keep them in perspective. Whether you agree or not, or you disagree, etc., that's not the issue. But when we assess things, let's learn to put them in perspective and never belittle something that was done, and you go to that extreme, over-exaggerate and blow it out of proportion. And some people, they draw a line between Hagia Sophia and Al-Aqsa and Mecca, and they found them there is a straight line. So they said that's the first step, and the next step will be, all of this is really people living on illusions, and do wishful thinking and daydreaming.
Yeah, Nushi, can I add? This is Mazen. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Could I add a couple of things on this issue?
Yes, Mazen, yes.
As an architect, I've been an architect for 35 years, and I have visited Hagia Sophia several times in many years, and I have studied that architecture very well. And that structure, with the minarets being added way back in the 15th, 16th century, has been used for a mosque for all these centuries. It's only in when Ataturk came in 1935, he basically decreed that structure should be a museum. So this is something that, as an architect, I feel that there is nothing wrong with it. I go back into Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, and the Umayyad Mosque was a Roman temple. Prior to that was a Greek temple, and after that it became a church. And then when the Muslims, when the Umayyad period came, it became a mosque. As a matter of fact, John the Baptist is buried inside the mosque. It was a church. I mean, when you think about it, John the Baptist is inside the Umayyad Mosque. Why? Because it was a church. So where do you draw the line? The same architecture, and you have over 800 mosques in Spain that were converted to churches, and nobody said a word about them. So it's not the issue of whether in historically, in the Hagia Sophia was a mosque or not. It was a mosque until 1935. From 1600 or even before that, for five centuries more, it has been a mosque. And when you go inside the structure itself, the architect that really converted that mosque in the 15th century, he could have easily erased every little thing in there, from the iconic Christian statues and Christian figures and the crosses and all of that. They could have completely wiped that clean, and but they did not do that. They practiced really honest, what we call honest true architecture. It was a church. They preserved that structure. They added to it, and they preserved it as a mosque. So now Turkey, they felt, well, we need the structure here, and there was nothing wrong with that, just like many other decisions. So there is, but what I feel is that a lot of Muslims are defeated personally. They are defeated, and because there is nobody that stands up for their rights. You come to the United States and you will see a lot of churches and synagogues converted to mosques. There's no difference. I did myself at least 10 of those structures. They were churches, including Dayton, Ohio. I helped the community to buy the church there in Dayton, Ohio, and we converted that church to a mosque. It is a fact. I surveyed, that, and I have done that many, many times. I remember, helping, one of the imams that passed away, may Allah bless his soul. I visited him in New Jersey. He called me, for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I consulted with the imam, and we know, and maybe you know whom I'm talking about. He was here in Virginia. He passed away, Allah yarhamu. So, and it was a church that was converted in New Jersey, and I did that with many, many other communities around the country to convert churches into mosques. So here, people take it really a little bit more than that. I think it is in a very simple. You buy a church, you have a structure, you buy the structure, and you spend on it. You can convert it into a bar, a restaurant, a mosque, or a church. It's just a free country, So here's a community that existed for 500 years that used the structure for a mosque, and now their Supreme Court, decreed that they can use it as a mosque because of all the facts. So to me, as an architect, there's no problem. As a Muslim, absolutely no problem. As an intellectual, there's no problem. So why is the cry? Why are we defeated personally that we cannot see the version of that structure to being a mosque? It's very natural. I'm going to shut up the phone here, the speaker, so I can hear you.
Thank you very much, Brother Mazen. The very important insight. And I'm sure I don't know whether you understood my point. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's not a big deal. Brother Ayman probably used different analogy. If Turkey today, if this was a territory that is conquered, and there are people who are worshiping there in that church, it would be wrong to take it from them and convert it to mosque. And that's what Umar al-Khattab did not do. I mean, if this is happening today, and there is still a community, and you take this property from them, and then you tell them that this is not going to be church anymore, we're going to convert it to a mosque. That's what Umar al-Khattab did not do, especially with the church that has it's very symbolic, very important but this is not a new problem. This is something that was in a Muslim territory for hundreds of years, and it was a mosque for hundreds of years, and it was not reverted back to a church. It was turned into a museum only for less than century. So all what I'm saying is it was blown out of proportion, either good or bad. The decision is much simpler than that. It's much simpler than that. There is no church community, there is no Christian community who are worshiping there and taking it as a church, and they were kicked out and said, we're going to convert this to a mosque. It's not a new problem. It's something inherited from history. It was a mosque for several hundred years, and then it was not turned into a church. It was turned into a museum, and now it is back to a mosque. It's much simpler than the way it was discussed by those who defended it and made it look like a historical, big victory and etc., or by those who opposed it under any reason. It's much simpler than that. It's much simpler decision, and I like the way Brother Mazen has put it. It's not different than buying a property and converting it, because it's not, again, it was not functioning as a church. It was not, there is no church, Christian community taking it as a church. It was taken out completely out of worship. It was a mosque that was closed to worship and turned into a museum. And somebody came and made it reverted to a mosque. But all what I'm saying, for me, it was not a big deal. It was not a big deal. It is not worth all the discussion that was that it triggered. I mean, and especially the exaggeration. And I don't like these exaggerations because throughout our history, most of our setbacks and failure came out of unrealistic hopes that we put them on a leader, and then we find ourselves that the victims of our own exaggerations. Just remember that there are hundreds of millions of people who slept in June 67, thinking that in the morning they will find Israel thrown in the sea, and they found Cairo and Damascus almost taken over. Yeah. That's how bad it is. Yeah. They woke up to find out that the Cairo and Damascus could have been easily occupied. Yeah.
They're probably the people who are doing these measurements that you said between Istanbul, Jerusalem, and Mecca probably have the same mentality as those that went to sleep hoping to be in the sea.
Yeah, very similar. We're repeating the same. I know what bothers me. It's okay for a nation or community to go into crisis. It happened to many. It's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to be in denial or to repeat mistakes. You should learn your lessons. Never put all your hopes on one individual. Nobody is infallible. Nobody has a magic whatever. And so that you don't end up with a big disappointment.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suhail. You have the emphasis on verse 83 of Surah Al-Baqarah has been great. The encapsulation, like you said, it's one of those verses that can define your aqidah. And I appreciate the input, the perspective on the Hagia Sophia. I think we can all now have intelligent conversations if the topic comes up, with friends. And I like the perspective that was shared. So Jazakallah khair.
Wa yakum inshallah. Jazakallah khair. All right, well, inshallah. We'll see you next Sunday, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum.